Casey, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
No, this is going to be a lovely. So today's guest believes that one of the greatest tools we have for unlocking human potential is something we use every day, our language. Casey Jackson is a globally recognized expert in evidence-based communication, culture, and behavioral change. He is the founder of the Institute for Individual and Organizational Change, a certified motivational interviewing trainer, and the lead author of the Motivational Interviewing Competency Assessment, and the author of Helping Heal the Science and Spirit that transforms trauma. Lots of T's there. After more than 3 decades of working across healthcare, mental health, leadership, education, and public services, Casey helps individuals and organizations understand how intentional communication can strengthen trust, reduce resistance, and create meaningful change. Today, we'll explore why telling people what to do rarely works, but how leaders create genuine buy-in, and why our ability to listen, connect, and communicate may become our greatest human advantage in increasing technological world. Casey, welcome to Unlocking Human Potential.
Thanks for having me.
So, our listeners, what was great? We were on a webinar together, and you
Yes.
got the short straw, didn't you? Unfortunately, and the short straw consisted of me and you in a breakout room together. Um,
The golden ring, not the short straw, the golden ring. That's what I got.
yeah, it was, and I think sometimes, and what's been great about the world that I live in, that there's sometimes that I come across people that I just connect with instantaneously, and we both connected, and then
Yep.
we had a conversation, which luckily you only had an hour because I probably could have talked at you for about five of them. And luckily for our listeners, the good news is we're also restricted with time today. So the good news is you'll be saved from that. So yeah, again, I seem to say this a lot because I'm really proud of the people we've had on so far, but this is a genuine privilege to have you on. So thank you.
So that's mutual. I just it's an honor for me to be on here. Did you know I love hanging out and talking with you? I mean, every time we get together, always
Oh.
something happens.
Oh, you say such lovely things. Um, So the one of the underlying things of the pod is always around curiosity. And so the opening question that we have all the time is, what is something you're curious about right now?
You know, I think I'm curious about, is there any ways we can make more of a difference? Truly. I mean, that's what I think about every day that I get to teach other professionals, every day with my own family. Um, I think I try not to have too much anxiety and paranoia over AI, mostly because the more I use it, the more fallible I see it is. So that gives me some reprieve. But partly what I've been thinking about and what keeps me curious is I think our last bastion for my own paranoia around it is human to human communication and connection, which we don't particularly, it's like we crave it, but we don't seek it out. we
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
put our face in our screen way too much. I know I do. And I crave human connection. But I think people are losing that capacity to listen and connect more deeply. I think we crave it. We can have a pint or, a cup of coffee and I think that helps. But I think those are the things I'm curious about. Is there anything I can be doing differently in my own personal life or professional life to foster and facilitate human connection that just seems to be fading so much with all this division in the world? So it's a
Mm.
big curiosity.
It is, but I think it's one that's aligned with a lot of people and a lot of thinking, isn't it? I think that especially for maybe it's the circles that I spend time in. I think we're having a conversation over the weekend, and I think with people, like you say, moving more isolating into either working alone and then moving into more of a connected AI world, especially the younger generation that communicate through, it's almost really nice to, you wonder if the new superpower is going to be actually the ability to connect more and more
Absolutely.
to humans. And so therefore the superpower of learning to communicate better is actually going to be a skill that we need to really push home hard. Mm.
it's fun to hear you say that because that has been my obsession for 25 years now, is just human communication and how does language impact the brain, and can I be more mindful and strategic in the way that I pay attention to how I speak, and can I track how it impacts someone else's brain, and can I be more effective to help their brain function more effectively and work
Mm,
better on its own behalf. And that is my obsession. I mean, that is my current obsession. So to hear you say that, it just validates. I mean, you and I are on, across the pond from each other, and
mm.
it so to hear that same theme is extremely, reaffirming for me that like there's a there's something there that is worth my time to keep exploring.
Oh, certainly. I mean, listen, I'll be on holiday next week reading some kind of communication or behavioral science based book by the side of the pool. So, you're completely talking to the converted over here. So
Yeah,
definitely. And I think a lot of our listeners are. I think that's the real interest. So that's why it was really interesting when we had our conversation. I think how you, and especially how you articulate the work that you're doing and things, I think will really resonate with lots of the listeners. So just throwing ourselves into it and just kind of, because the conversations in the podcast is around the three topics, kind of how do we get or unlock our own potential, and then how do we kind of unlock potential in others? And then kind of we'll try and wrap it up with some advice for people out there about what they can either do for themselves or help support what they can do for others. And then we'll obviously kind of bring it all together with some challenges for our audience.
sounds good.
Um, so I think if we just talk about kind of get the best out of ourselves, you were talking about there to begin with around like how you're always aware or conscious of the work you're trying to do for yourself to make sure that you're better. Do you want to share any insights or any of your journey that maybe will resonate with some of the people out there that are also looking to improve themselves?
When I think of a kind of a evolutionary jump in my progression, I started as a therapist, as a clinician for youth, and that was my obsession, was helping young people. Um, Depression, substance use, suicidality. It's just a population I was obsessed with working with because I just saw unlimited potential there. And what that requires is really good communication.
Mm,
Because normal communication doesn't work with youth. Educational communication doesn't work. Trying to be interpersonal, trying to be too friendly doesn't work. But I think every human being, and it was so clear to me with youth, is people want to be heard and seen and understood and not judged, and that unlocks potential. And you know, 35 years later, I look at the research, the book that I showed you on effective psychotherapists.
mm,
You look at those top four qualities we know is empathy, accurate empathy, being able to be genuine, accepting people, and having positive regard just calms the brain down because we're around so much judgment so much of the time and so many opinions and all these things. And so for my own personal journey, looking inward about things that I wanted, and then knowing that to expect that other people are going to give that to me is a tall ask. I don't
mm,
think it's unreasonable, but in some ways I felt like it was a setup. So then it's kind of starting with myself, of hearing myself and respecting myself differently and not expecting it from the outside. And then an accountability for myself too. What what it came down to, this was a huge learning leap for me as I was more immersed in motivational interviewing specifically, was that every decision I make, I started running it through, is my behavior or my decision in alignment with a core value of mine, like integrity. And boy, I had to stop and think before I'd open my mouth in my relationships, in my parenting, because a lot of the things that I wanted to say or do, I could justify, I could rationalize, but was it in alignment with integrity?
mm,
That really made me have to stop before I opened my mouth, and sometimes not even say anything because I couldn't come up with an answer of what would be the most integrous thing to do. And so it was partially a practice what you preach. Like I want to be as healthy as I can be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Like that was my commitment. I didn't want to be a therapist that was doing marriage counseling and been divorced 4 times. There's just
mm,
something that was congruent for me about that. And so those learning leaps for me really had to do with my own personal integrity and professional integrity. And not that I had to put myself above reproach, but that I really had to climb that journey of what healthy is and how was I going to define it if I was going to have any capacity to be a Sherpa in someone else's life to help them navigate that terrain, because it is not easy terrain to navigate. Everybody has an opinion, but opinions don't help people change their behavior. It can adjust their thinking, but adjusting thinking is way different than adjusting behavior. Adjusting thinking is not particularly difficult to do. Adjusting behavior is extremely complex.
Mm. And is there something, I guess the question that resonates in my mind, and so that felt that there's quite a high level of self-awareness in you, in the sense of you're obviously, you're quite aware of your values that you've done, and you've put some time into you kind of understanding those kind of things. So you've then got, I guess my interpretation, a lens of the world to view you from. Would uh, the and I think where we both are aligned is we've both put a lot of time into ourselves to create that, and we're both aware of that, which is a
Yes.
great lens to look through for. I would also say it's my superpower, my kryptonite, because it also allows me to be my biggest critical friend, which sometimes can be helpful and not so helpful, depending on how you want to
Yeah.
view that. Um,
Yeah.
so is there an element for people listening? Because I'm conscious that, the people out there that probably go, well, how do you do that? How do you get the time to, or how do you even start to consider that what my values are? Is there any kind of thought around that? Because I hear what you're saying, that, once you've got that, then you
Yeah.
can, you can be looking at the world through that. I guess there's a step before that, isn't there, of actually going, okay, so how do you create those values, or how do you find or fully understand what they mean?
It- you know what's interesting, Andy, about this? And I don't know much about your history, just that you and I connect so well. My joke that's relatively true is I always say I'm this, a poor scrub from Sixth and Bowdish, which was a lower income part of the city I was raised in. And I always have felt, or not always, but most of my through my 20s, I just felt like I was behind the game because of, not massive poverty, but I wasn't the straight A student, but I was always a good student. And so I've just always felt in kind of maybe the average, upper average. So it's odd to me, even at this stage in my career, that it's like, oh, how did you get that insight? How did you get that insight? Because I think I always feel like I'm behind the eight ball. So
Okay.
I don't know why people listen to me, and I don't know why, they have me talk on all these things that I've come to, except for it's what I told you in terms of that was my commitment when I decided to go into the helping profession,
Mm.
is I didn't want to be a fraud, and I didn't want to be the Wizard of Oz, that it was all smoke and mirrors and opinions and other people's books that I'd read. It was from lived experience, and how do I integrate that? And that's a lot of work. And it's not even therapy per se. I think I'm just somebody that I know I was born lucky that I like to listen, I care about people, and I just want to know the truth. So, like when you were just talking about that critical part of yourself, I'm critical on myself, but I like the truth. So if it's just blatant truth, then it's like, okay, that's the truth. You don't like me, or you think this is absolutely wrong. It's like I'd rather you told me the truth, because at least it gives me real data to work with, I guess, is what my
Yeah.
my brain always thought. So when it comes to finding the values piece, it wasn't anything special that I did. I think it's just looking at my own behaviors and how I react to things and going, wow, for somebody that says that this is one of your core values, why would you be manipulative in that situation as an employee? You don't respect people like that. Why would you do that? Like that's odd to me. And so it was never this negative shame voice. It was just always this, that's incredibly puzzling for somebody who says that this is the kind of person you are. So that kind of self-awareness was just like, I think because I don't let myself get away with a lot of rationalizing and justifying. Like I'll do it, I'm human, but mostly I get really blatantly honest and just go, yeah, you're just fooling yourself. Why is
Mm.
that who you want to be? Somebody that fools themselves like that? And I think these are the critical things as a therapist that I just believe that if you're going to go into helping other people navigate this part of their brain, you better be pretty good at it. So that was just the standard I held myself to. And again, I didn't think I was, I've always felt like I was kind of two steps behind probably the majority of people until I turn around going, why isn't everybody else talking about these things? Why aren't we all doing this together? And it's like, oh my gosh, how did I end up not falling into those traps?
Oh gosh, so many directions I could go with this. I mean, I would, so I can only talk from my experience. My experience is, I would say that that's for, especially in the world I probably work with a lot of senior leaders, that self-awareness isn't always there.
Yeah.
And that the ability to have that honest conversation and feel comfortable having an honest conversation with self, and also listening to self to say, like, you've just, you might behave in a certain way, and that other part of you turns around and goes, hold on a minute, I thought you were this guy. What are you behaving like that guy for? But it's almost that self-regulation reigning in kind of
Yes.
thing. I'm going to be quite bold to say I don't think that exists in an awful lot of people.
That's
Not from the
interesting to me. It is.
not from
And I
the
don't
experience that
disagree.
I've seen.
It's fascinating.
And so when I listen to you say that, yes, I think that's what's made you, and that's probably, I would argue without kind of blowing smoke or your own trumpet, what's made you become on the journey you're doing, especially the work you're doing now, and why, when I said you were coming onto this and I shared some of the things that, a lot of my circle were going, oh my God, when they were reading your CV and what we were talking about, were like, yes, get that version straight over to me the minute it's been edited. So I think, and I hear what you say, and one of the things I was from the first conversation is the humility that you probably hold. Now, I don't know if that goes back to what you were saying about, well, I'm two steps behind, or I'm just an average guy that seems to be doing this, because the
Yeah.
outside version of us, the rest of us look at him and go, whoa, he's doing some really cool stuff and he's saying some really cool stuff,
Yeah.
and I know you can't see
I,
that.
I see the way you see it and it makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Because I think that's the reality though, is
yeah,
that when I made the decision as a therapist, it's like then I started doing the work and it wasn't this. I mean, some of it is a painful journey, but that's, I mean, you're an athlete, if you're going to do it and you want to be good at it, there's going to be, you have to push yourself. And if you're not going to push yourself, no harm, no foul, but
yeah,
just you're not going to be an elite athlete.
yeah,
There's a choice. My choice was I wanted to be elite as a therapist. I didn't want to be the best therapist. I wanted to be a high quality, I want to be somebody that really made a difference. I mean,
yeah,
and so I think that was like, well, what were you striving for? What were you achieving? It's like, well, I just wanted to be really good and not do harm and make sure that if people were going to pay me, their lives were going to get exponentially better and they were getting an ROI. They were getting a return on their investment. Like
yeah,
that just seems like baseline to me. And that's just
yeah,
me because that's what I want. Like, I don't care if I'm
yeah.
going to a restaurant or, a hardware store. Like, I want quality for what I pay for. And I get really annoyed when I don't get the quality that I expect.
Mm,
The thing that's interesting when you're talking about it, Andy, and this I give 100% credit to motivational interviewing construct for one of the constructs of why is it a little bit different. I can feel when you say that like not a lot of leadership does that because I know because I work with a lot of leadership as well too to try to help adjust culture. And what I think the fundamental factor is in motivational, they divide language into four types of language. So you don't get so caught in content as much when you're purely locking into motivational interviewing as a method of communication. You don't track story as much. You track four types of language. Um, and the first two types of language are resistance talk, which just means we blame outside of ourselves, and sustain talk is excuses, which is normal, it's natural, it's human, and it's cross-cultural. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing bad, it's not a negative thing, it just is human language. Well, again, if you're going to practice what you preach, I know that the human brain, when my behavior is not in line with my values, I know my human reaction is to want to blame outside of myself or make an excuse. So if
mm,
I know that that's the architecture of it, if I know that's going to be the cadence, then as a human, I can go, there's nothing wrong with you blaming outside yourself or making an excuse. It will not help you evolve and change as a person because this is the construct of how to help people change behavior in motivational interviewing is how do you convert sustained talk to change language? Sustained language and change language is you're just explicitly defining ambivalence that every human being on this planet has. Is you're torn between two things. Do I stay in this marriage or leave this marriage? Do I stay in this job or leave this job? Should I go back to school? Should we adopt? Like every one of those those are major ambivalences, but every day, what are we gonna have for dinner?
Mm.
Those kind of things. So if we know that the preponderance of our language tends to revolve around resistance language and sustained language, blaming and excuses, and you just go, oh, that's the mechanics, that's the arithmetic. I'm just not going to give as much energy there. I'll honor it because I'm human. So it's not like I don't have resistance or sustained
Yeah.
talk. I just don't put the preponderance of my energy there because I know that it results a negative outcome or status quo. And I'm somebody that I am on this planet for such a short time. I am not spending much time in status quo. I'm just not. There's just not time for it.
I love that. I really do. Just for people that are unfamiliar or new to motivational interviewing, can you just give a high level summary of what it is?
Sure. Yeah, it's one of the most well-researched methods of communication on the planet, like global research. It's extremely well researched, and it was born out of the addiction world. And Dr. William Miller, it was his brainchild in terms of just how to talk to people differently so they don't have to be defensive. And he just started with the basic premise that people are struggling internally. So don't create anything that causes them to have conflict with you. Let them get all their thoughts out of their head. And when you let most human beings get all their thoughts out of their head and start thinking about their values and their goals, most people know what they need to do. They don't want to do it, but they know what they need to do. That 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 is the most simplified way of talking
Nice.
about it. When you get into it, like the capacity to execute that, massive amount of skill and strategy that you have to be aware of. Mostly what you have to be aware of is how do you keep yourself out of the equation so they're not paying attention to you, so they're paying attention to themselves. And
Mm.
so that's the high level MI is you're reducing tension in dialogue, and then helping people work through ambivalence, which is why I got such a reputation of doing it with law enforcement and hostage negotiators because I'm helping them get rid of tension, interpersonal dynamic tension in less than 3 to 5 minutes, and then
Wow.
helping people work ambivalence quickly. So again, there's an arithmetic to it, but then it's deeply rooted in compassion, because compassion helps people's brains decompress, and empathy
Mm.
helps the brain decompress. So it can't be fake and it can't be technique driven. It's this fascinating balance. It's literally why part of the title of the book was, the science and the spirit that transforms trauma, because it's partly science. But if you do not have compassion and accurate empathy, you can do techniques all day long, they won't work. They won't have sustainability. They won't have staying power.
And I think just the way you've just kind of articulated that, and I think the way you articulate before about almost hearing the way you talk either to yourself or externally, I think listeners can take an awful lot from that, can't they? Because I think how you to use that Jahari where you bring in things that you probably do unconsciously into the conscious. And I think I would certainly, if you're listening to this and you're out driving or walking and you're going, ooh, I do slip into that. I think the compassion with self to say that's okay, you're human,
That's easy.
taking the
Yeah,
acknowledging it at the start point, but actually picking up from what you were saying, that's all right because you're human, but recognize that's probably not going to get you to where you need to be. So staying in that state or staying in that way of communication probably isn't going to move you in the direction you might want to go. So therefore, maybe have a little conversation with yourself, acknowledge what needs to change in the way you do things, and then articulate differently. Have I interpreted that well?
that's exactly it. I mean, and that's why it's not overly complicated. I think that's one thing I know I get a lot of credit for is taking a lot of complicated concepts and making them common sense. I think that because my brain is just a sixth and boutish concrete thinker, common sense thinker. So it's just like, well, doesn't that just make sense? When you hear it, it's like, well, yeah, it just makes sense. The
Mm.
execution is way harder than people think it is.
Yeah.
That's understanding the concept is not overly complex. The execution and daily application is that's why I go back to you as an elite athlete. It's like that that is daily discipline. If you want that outcome, again, no judgment either way. It's just if you want that outcome, it requires a different level of discipline. And if you want a healthy life where you see change happening consistently and you're happier, it takes discipline. It takes self-discipline. Like anything, if you're going to be
Mm.
exceptionally good at it. And I want to be exceptionally good at life. So that was important to me.
No, and I think it's massive. I think the takeaway I've taken from that is that, and also is you're prepared to put the work in to do that, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a real key takeaway that I've picked up from that is, you know, it is to get good at something, you've got to put the work in, like you've said. You can have
Yeah.
the high level concept, that's it, you know, but actually to get good at anything, and that I think that's one of the things that I think the other thing we've both aligned on is the fact that we're prepared to get down and graft if we find something that, you know, really resonates with us and aligns with who we are as a human or what we think we are, you know. I get energized personally from watching other people become successful. That's my role as a coach. Which, you know, if you hear, you know, some good news that ultimately doesn't benefit you, but you know they're doing well in the world and you've paid whatever, that might be a conversation they've had with you that's facilitated something. That energy that gives me that smile, it gives me that kind of buzz, it gives me, yeah, just it's you know, it's just my motivator for that. So, um,
Absolutely.
which makes
You know,
me
it's
thrive to get better. To you know, so my constant thing, I need to get better because I want more of that. So yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That's it. So that's why when it's like, how do you do this? I do this. Like, isn't that just what you do? Like it just seems like that's just the what you need to do. If you want to help more people be more healthy, then you need to get more healthy to help them get more healthy.
no, I really like that. No, that's cool. I guess the thing for me then is if we, you know, if we're to kind of just take that section in, just thinking about, okay, so people listening to this, you know, one, if you're listening to this, kind of look at that awareness, you know, being aware of how we're talking to ourselves and others, maybe, and kind of say where you are. Think about, are you staying where you are actually, if you're looking to improve, what potentially work do you need to do on yourself and probably the way you communicate, not only with yourself and with others. Um, but thinking about then communicating with others, you know, the saying that I always use is we never expect people to look the same. So if I walk into a room and I'm doing some presentation work or I'm working to doing a workshop, so you know, why do we assume that everyone communicates, thinks, and learns the same? You know, because we walk in, we go, oh, everyone looks different, but actually we present in the same way or the way that style that's to us. I'll leave that one there. But I guess so. Just about thinking about getting the best out of others. You know, what where does that land with you as a topic?
It's one of the things you read off, I developed a tool to measure motivational. I mean, stood on the shoulders of other giants and kind of modified some tools on how do you measure if people are even using it well. Because people think they like we learn things like reflective listening and open-ended questions that every communication teaches, but like, okay, what specifically makes it this? And I always talk about like grandma's recipe, like why does hers taste different than everybody else's, even if she's using some of the same ingredients? So that's fidelity to an evidence-based practice. And I think when we start looking from that lens, it's like, how do we engage people's brains differently? And one of the things that you and I were talking about, why I was so obsessed with that book, is one of the most potent things you can do is high accurate empathy. And accurate empathy is different than being empathic. It's different than just expressing empathy. Accurate empathy it's its own thing. Like it's a more complex. You have to trigger your mirror neurons. You have to be inside somebody else's reality without judgment. That sets up individual communication or individual learning, individualized learning, because you're starting with that brain first. And why I love it is because I love travel and I love meeting new people, interesting people. Is that's what I think of every conversation I get to go into, whether it's as a therapist or I'm talking to a CEO. Literally, it's not about my expertise because I don't feel like I know all that much. I'm more fascinated to go into this culture and I always think if I go into another culture, I'm too ignorant to open my mouth. What I need to do is just shut my mouth and listen to get oriented to this culture. And that's the way I see every individual I get to talk to is you're not smart enough to think that you're smarter than the person you're talking to. That's just an arrogant perspective. It's an ignorant perspective. So why don't you spend some time listening to their worldview and where do they find themselves stuck? And then as I listen to them, you can see the greatness in human beings if you just stop and listen to them. Because sometimes it's buried somewhere they can't see it, but as a guest in their house, you can see, oh my gosh, this is an amazing piece of
Mm,
art. Like, why is this not shining
mm,
up here? And it just, and between the two of you, does that highlight something or elucidate something in their brain that's like, wow, why don't I lean on that more? And here's somebody that doesn't even know me and they can see this part of me. Wow, I put that down because of guilt or shame or messages from my family or messages from my friends or whatever. And it's like, wow, is that something that's a part of me? And that's where agency and self-efficacy is born from,
mm.
is finding those things within us that we know we can work with. So I love it when you talk about, how do you do the same training? I was laughing because I just had this conversation this weekend as I'm developing a curriculum. I've been training on motivational for 25 years now, and I've never trained the same training twice, the same intro to MI, because the group is different every time and the questions are different.
Mm.
Tell them, like, what do you want to learn? Like, I know so much, we can't even talk about everything that I know. Where are you at? What do you want to learn? Like that. And if you don't tell me, then I can't teach you. And if that's not your style, that's fine because other people in the room are going to talk. So that's where the curriculum is going to go. How do you get bored with that career? I mean,
Mm.
seriously,
Yeah,
like I never
yeah.
do the same thing twice, and I get to be around amazing people who are trying to change other people's lives, whether I'm working with leadership or administrations or therapists or doctors or physios, or it's just like this is amazing. And then you get a
Again,
paycheck for it.
go on, say that again, sorry.
I said, then you get a paycheck at the end of the day. I mean, that's crazy, Andy.
Um, it- is it crazy? But I think that the thing with that is, but you've recognized that, haven't you? And I think that's also a skill, It's like going in with preconceived expectations, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh, I've got this group of, so you're talking about law enforcement. That's to say, oh, well, I've got another law enforcement group, so therefore I'm going to roll out this same thing because they're all in law enforcement, they're all at the same academy or whatever it might be. So
yes,
therefore
yes,
they're all going to be the same. It's going,
yeah,
you're almost pre-framing expectation,
yeah,
whereas actually if you can go in with none and almost ask what is the expectation of you from me, and
yeah,
therefore how do I match that? One of my sayings I seem to use an awful lot is, the kind of conflicts or upset or arguments come from mismatch on expectation.
yeah. That's it.
So if we just kind of go, okay, so just out of curiosity, what would you like to end with by the end of this session, and how can I
Yes.
support that? Or, you know, and then they go, oh, one or that. All right, so if I can deliver all of that and you can leave like that, and if we work out what it's like to get there, and when you leave, how do we know you've got there? Would that be a good training session? That'll be awesome, right? I'll adapt to that.
That's like, isn't that what we should? To me, it's like, yeah, yeah,
No,
that's it.
I
That's it.
understand, but I would
Yeah,
argue I don't, because I mean I was, and I have to be careful because I went off on a tangent then, and I will, I'll share it though just because it's relevant. But I remember walking into it to a group coaching session and saying, right, what do we all need to leave with? And everyone looked at me as if to say, well, don't know, you tell me what we're doing. I went,
yeah,
it's not about me. It's like,
yeah.
you've got 8 people in the room. What would you all need to leave with for this to be successful for you? And then I understand what the team and the organization need to leave with, but what will be good for you so you feel you can do your job at the best of your ability when we leave here in the next 4 hours.
And
And
connect
it,
the dots.
and it was just because I could take this conversation wherever you go. I'm really, really comfortable with that. That's fine. And oh, right, this is how we're going to work. This is about me. Yeah, yeah, it's about me. It's about you. And, oh, cool. Okay. All of a sudden, it changed the dynamic of the whole thing.
Absolutely changes it.
But then it going back to that, one of the things we're doing a lot of work with is psychological safety and creating safe spaces for people to feel comfortable to say things out loud or to express how they feel. And I think sometimes, and I'd be curious where this lands with you, is that, as a trainer, there's for a lot of people in organizations, the person in the back goes, well, if I say something out loud, ask a silly question, I've got to work with these people. And as a trainer, I guess that engagement sometimes is helpful. So
Yeah.
curious, is there anything around that of how you kind of set a scene to kind of create that psychological safe space where people feel that they can feel comfortable to speak out or
Yeah, one of the things that I know, because it's the same for me when I show up, is that why did you get in the field in the first place? And why would you let your colleagues or peers or administration stop you from being exceptional in your field if you want to be exceptional in this field? Like, isn't that why we're here, is to
Mhm.
learn? And this is my wrestling all the time, is when I get put in an expert role, when it's like, I just know what I know. I don't think I'm an expert, but I know what I know. And I've studied a lot of things, just like all of us have studied lots of things. We're all experts on things. But if you're trying to change behavior, I know what I know. So tell me what you know. And between the two of us, we can build a better mousetrap. But if you don't tell me, then then why would you do this? Just go read a book. Like, this should be dialogue. Um, so if I don't know where your brain is at, then you're just having somebody espouse things. You could just watch a TED talk. Like, save yourself the
Mhm.
time of sitting through 8 hours of training with me and go watch a TED talk. But if you want a dialogue, share where you're at and share what your thinking is, and then let me know who you want to be as a professional and why you got in the field. And then let's move that needle in the time that we have together. So you feel like you're better and more present and having more of an impact that you wanted to. But if you don't tell me what's going on in your brain, then I can't connect those dots. Um, and I think because people want to be exceptional in their field most of the time. Some people want to get out of their field. And I think, well, good, then have a real conversation so you can get out of your field and get into a field that does make you happy. But if
Mhm.
you just keep it inside your brain, then that's not going to help. Um, so I love the whole thing. We can always say, we're all experts in this room, but there also has to be a way to, how do you articulate that too? That it's like, I just know what I know and you know what you know. And between the two of us, can we build a better mousetrap over the course of the day? That makes you feel like your job is better or you're better as a human being. Let's focus on that, which makes people want to open up and kind of share tentatively. But
Mhm.
first of all, are you even telling the truth? Like, is this real? Like, that's not how this usually goes. Because you like to stand up there and look at PowerPoints and read off of them. So, which I don't do. So it's like, but then you have to practice what you preach.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that same accountability from the start of the conversation we had, is my behavior in line with my values?
I love that. I love that. But it is, and it is that, isn't it? It's that, every experience is an opportunity for shared learning experience, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And as long as you see that as that famous saying is every day is a learning day. Well, every conversation can be a learning day as well, can't it? It can be a learning moment. And I think that's the great thing of having groups of people, and especially if they're of a similar background or mindset, you can actually pick up some stuff and views of the world and lenses that I've never probably thought about before. So, no, I love that.
Pretty
I'm
wonderful.
conscious of our time. And before
Okay.
we start wrapping it up in some advice or some kind of challenges that we like to set our, is there any kind of topics around unlocking potential in self or others that you feel would be good that we've not really talked about or you think would be relevant in this moment? The answer can be
Like, what do you
no.
mean? Okay.
Would you, it could be, it could, doesn't have to, there doesn't have to be a thing. It's, there's always the, well, I'm just thinking as a, in your experience of, as a trainer and a therapist and all the other things you do, if you're a leader or a founder or, an ambitious professional listening to this, is there any, if there's any more pearls that you think that would be really, really helpful to kind of thing that we've not really touched on? Is there anything before we kind of move into advice you think would be helpful to any listener now?
It, yeah, it might be a little too esoteric, but honestly, I mean, what is the point? What's the point to life for you? I mean,
Yeah.
those are the things that drive. When I think of, okay, what haven't we talked about? I mean, what are my drivers every day? It's like, what's the point? Why am I here on the planet? That's really important for me to know. And then that really does follow it. Then what are your values and is your behavior in alignment with it? So
Mhm.
that's why for me, it transcends religion, it transcends social politics, it trans everything. It just really is, why am I on this planet? And is my behavior in line with my value? And am I moving that direction? And I know when I do it, this is why I brought the other part up, there's a high probability I'm going to blame outside myself and make excuses. So that is a basic formula. Is for me, that my daily operations is why am I here every morning I wake up, and are you happy? And if you're not, then change it. And if you are, keep doing it. Um, and do you feel like after the curtain is closed and you're 5 minutes on the other side of the plexiglass looking at your life, um, are you going to have any regrets? And if you are, step up, so you don't. Like that. That's how I kind of encapsulate my daily operations.
Mm, I like that. Hopefully that. Hopefully there's a lot of resonance going on. There's a lot of insights in this. This is one of the, you're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to listen back a few times to pick some stuff. So just moving into, or I'll just try and get part two out here. The all three or four, the three practical things that people could try today.
Get clear about what your values are. And values, people get confused about this because we think say we value things like work or family or friends, that those are not core human values. It has to do with connection, integrity, fulfillment, more on that level, stability, security, peace. They're human values, they're core human values cross-culturally. So that would be one of the primaries I would say is really start to define what your core values are and realize how much of the time do I spend in my own brain blaming outside myself or making excuses. That would be worth your time to just track that and just go, man, I spend a lot of time on things that yield zero outcomes, zero
Hmm.
positive outcomes. Um, Actually, quite the opposite. It generates negative outcomes. So I just walk with those two, because that's a fundamental shift in how your brain operates, and you can recalibrate based on that.
I would add to listeners, make sure you're putting time aside sometimes, or when that brain comes in, taking time to recognize what that is. You notice it because I think sometimes when we're busy, that comes in and we just kind of flap it and we just so if there's if you can create a habit to kind of either recognize that or to look at that habit of it's the same thing being said all the time in certain situations, and then maybe make a note of that and go, actually, I probably need to do something about this quite soon or quite quickly. Or, and what we'll find out very shortly is how you can just book on one of Casey's training courses, and then and then you, and then you'll be good.
Yeah.
Um, what's one principle that you wish every leader understood?
Um, you need to practice what you preach.
Oof, strong.
Yeah. If you're not going to practice what you preach, how do you expect your workforce to keep their behavior in line with their values if your behavior is not in line with what you wrote on the wall in terms of vision, mission, values? Because when you look at that and you start making excuses or blame outside of yourself, you just give your entire workforce that same permission.
Yeah, nothing to add. That's brilliant. Just, I'm conscious we're going to start wrapping up because I know you're just off to do some training now. So, for people who have enjoyed the conversation, where can they follow you or find out more
Um,
about you?
Probably just the same old LinkedIn. Is a great place. They can always email me. Just find me on the website ifioc.com. The individual for Institute for Individual and Organizational Change, just ifioc.com. I'm heading back in. My goal is to head back to the UK in May and travel around the whole UK and do one dayers for people that are interested in brain science and behavior change and empathy and psychological safety. How do we help others and ourselves get better? So I'm super excited about that, the potential next year. Um, yeah, those are probably the key ways
No,
to.
brilliant. We'll put all the links and stuff in the show notes as well, so people can very quickly get it. What we're working on next? There's this. There's the UK tour.
The UK tour, yeah, and I need to Stephen Rolnick is one of the who's in Wales in Cardiff, one of the big names in motivational ring. He's going to help me try to get the book published. So that's my next big thing for me is I put so much work into it, and it I just want to help people more, and that understand the science part and the humanity. Like how do we blend science, humanity, and some indigenous wisdom on how do we get back to helping people better in a way that now we've got science to back up? Like, how do we be good people and help other people be healthier, but give way more structure to it than just kind of philosophy, like give some mechanics and science to how that works. So a lot of people have access to that. So I'm trying to get the
So
book
the
published
book,
next.
so the book of this podcast. So we definitely need to. Well, once that's done, we can. We'll be the biggest advocates of that. So that's definitely there.
Great.
So when
Um,
that's done, we'll definitely add this to it. Just before we wrap up, one final challenge you would like to offer the audience.
yeah, it's kind of like I was saying about finding your values. I do think it is. It never, I mean, I think we do it every day, but just always, why are we here? Like, what do you want to do? Why are you here? Why are you on the planet? And when you're gone, what do you want to have left behind? Or what do you want to have experienced? Like that every day. I think that is a massive challenge. Just don't get caught up in the social drama and social things because it is such a distraction. Like, what is the point? Why were you born? What are you doing what you're meant to be doing? And if you feel like you're not, then then I'm guessing you're gonna have a lot of sustained talk and resistance talk and get over it.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's a
definitely.
challenge.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I've loved this. I've loved it. And yeah, hope we can get a part two in again soon as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
To all of our listeners, please make sure that you are following the pod and make sure that you are following Casey. And till next time, thank you ever so much.